Okay.
Better, I like it. Elder statesman.
All right, everybody.
Hi.
Let's call this meeting of the Board of Education to order. Beth, can you call the roll?
Mr. Bodie?
Here?
Mrs. Gephardt?
Here.
Mr. Gousset?
Here.
Mrs. Matney?
Here.
And Ms. Wassmuth?
Here.
All right, Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes. I always like where it is, because I swear it moves.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. First on the agenda is the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Beth, please call the roll.
Mr. Bodie?
Aye.
Mrs. Gephardt?
Aye.
Mr. Gousset?
Aye.
Mrs. Matney?
Aye.
And Ms. Wassmuth?
Aye.
All right. One of the best parts of our agenda is the recognition. So I think Andy's coming up.
Would you mind coming up with me? Well, we're gonna get Rachel.
Okay, good.
Don't you worry. All right, why don't you stand with me right here, if it's okay with you?
Great.
You good? Tonight, I welcome and introduce Gail Johannes. In 2017, William C. and Gail Ann Johannes of Marble Cliff established an honorarium to celebrate Grandview Heights School's recipient of the annual Teacher of the Year. Mr. and Mrs. Johannes established this grant in honor of their mothers, May Smith Johannes and Charlotte, and I hope I say this right, Malshert
Yeah.
Tyler.
Perfect, yes.
Can you say that again?
Melcher, they said
No,
Melcher.
perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
And their daughter, Emily Johannes
Right.
Esterling.
Yeah.
May Johannes taught home economics at Grandview Heights High School and managed the school district's cafeterias from the mid-1930s to the mid-1940s.
That's right.
Charlotte Tyler, raised in Marble Cliff at 1964 Cardigan Avenue, attended Grandview Heights Schools, graduating in 1936.
Right.
Emily Esterling attended the Grandview Heights Schools, graduating from Grandview Heights in 1996. Mrs. Johannes, on behalf of the students and staff of Grandview Heights Schools, I want to thank you and your dear husband, Bill,
Yeah.
for establishing this honorarium and supporting our teachers and students in such a generous, thoughtful, and meaningful way. We do have a small token of appreciation tonight.
Oh, that's very sweet. Thank you
That's for
very
you.
much.
Oh,
That's
thank you.
very
You-
nice. My purple.
Can I give you a quick hug?
Favorite colors.
Oh, yay.
I'm not wearing them, but, but Ohio State's my favorite color too.
Did you want to say a few words?
No,
Okay.
I'm so happy you guys do this, and I love the teachers here. I think this is a fabulous school, and I just think we are so happy to be supporting it, so.
Well, this year's Teacher of the Year is exceptional, I must say. Or should I say it in Spanish?
Yes, in Spanish.
I'm not going, no. Rachel, Angie, would you two mind coming up?
Andy, I want to hear you botch the Spanish so she can correct it.
I'm not even gonna.
You'll say.
So it is my privilege to introduce Rachel Smith tonight. She is a Grandview graduate. She's dedicated 20 years to students and families in Grandview. I know she looks 18, but she has done 20 years of service in Grandview. She is always eager to learn and grow. As the CAO, she talks to me about what can I learn in the summer? Can we meet and can talk about a new course creation? Can I have time with the Spanish department so we can work on scope and sequence? She often is the teacher named in our surveys where kids label her as someone who makes them feel safe, supported, and cared for. She is the smile in the hallway to all of her staff members and colleagues, and she is our district staff yoga instructor, so she does take care of all of our mental health. She is the teacher that teaches kids to speak Spanish. But she is the educator who goes above and beyond every day to make sure every staff member and every student knows they're cared and loved for. Rachel Smith.
Thank you.
Did you want to say a few words?
Thank you. Well, thank you.
I don't like talking to grown-ups. Talking to kids is easy, talking to grown-ups is, yeah. It's just truly an honor to work here. I've had two of yours. I will have yours and yours. Yeah, down the road, I've had both of yours. So I love what I do, and I hope that shows. And I've grown a lot as an educator because I work with wonderful people, and I'm supported by the staff, and I get to work with awesome young minds who are up for anything every day. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Would you mind if we can get a picture? Angela, do you want to come? And should we get the family as well? Yeah, all of you.
Sure, get the family.
Lady of the night, Angela.
Angie, you stand here.
Oh, there it is. Nope. Angela. We're just going Andrew. Let's start calling him Andrew. Let's start calling him Andrew. See what he does. What are you doing over here?
I'm trying to send this to my kids, but why?
Do you read it off? Cancel. You're trying to send a photo. You gotta take it first.
We are so fortunate to have such wonderful teachers here, and also so fortunate to have a community that supports these teachers, so thanks to you both. Recognition of guests and hearing of the public. Is there anyone who would like to speak before the board tonight? Hi.
I would love to speak.
If you could state your name and address for us, that'd be great.
My name is Haitham Bakari. I live at 825 Burr Avenue. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Like I said previously, my name is Haitham Bakari. I'm a current student leader of the Bobcat Anti-Racism Collective. I am extremely grateful to be in a school like Grandview Heights. Grandview Heights continuously allows the students to partake and create clubs like BARC. This students' involvement, this is so important for our school's development and student involvement. BARC is a group of students, student leaders that actively try to prevent racism, along with raising awareness towards past or current issues revolving around race in our town, city, state, and world. We actively host movie nights, general sessions, and school assemblies to educate our community on these issues. We've also provided resources to help combat bills in our legislature. In the first quarter of this school year, we have hosted a representative from ACLU, Ohio, to come and talk to us about how and why certain schools ban books from their libraries. They did an outstanding job and really gave us a feel for what we can accomplish in BARC. This month, we plan to have Dr. Rochelle Brackney come to our school to partake in a whole school assembly. As a minority woman who has built an impressive career in law enforcement, we hope she will provide an inspirational and engaging experience for all the students and staff of Grandview Heights High School. There are a couple of things we have executed, and we plan to engage in more projects in the future. In today's society, we need to be more inclusive in BARC's advocate programs that, I'm so sorry. In today's society, we need to be more inclusive, and BARC's advocate programs that help to meet that end. I'm especially glad that our school tries its best to provide a holistic curriculum filled with representation from diverse outlets. I hope the school continues to include diverse voices, as I think it is very important for our students. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming to speak with us, and thanks for all you guys do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak before the board?
Jim?
No. Okay, next we have the Ohio State Report Card presentation from our Chief Academic Officer, Angie Ullum.
Angie, I did raise that. If you would like to,
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah.
It's a foot, no, it's a foot, see that?
Oh, yeah. It's a foot thing?
Yes.
That does help. Thank you. Just a minute here while I get hooked up.
Sure.
Well, I'm excited to present to you tonight our state report card information. I titled this presentation Celebration and Reflection because there are lots of things to celebrate as part of this report card. And it is always good to reflect because you're always getting better when you're reflecting and thinking about what we can do differently. I want you to know as we go into this report card tonight that this really focuses on grades 3 through 10. And it focuses primarily on math, reading, science, and now U.S. government and U.S. history. I want you to remember that this is an important measure, but it's only one measure of success in a school. So this year is the first time that districts were given an overall rating. We were given 5 stars this year, or we earned 5 stars this year, and we are 1 out of 75 schools in the state of Ohio that received 5 stars. And just so you know, there are 607 schools in the state of Ohio.
607?
Yep, 607.
That school district, so the district was, we were one of how many, 75 you said?
1 of 75.
That got
Yep, with 5 stars. So then tonight, my presentation will focus on each component of the grade card.
And you said districts, not schools, or schools, not districts.
It's districts.
We're doing districts.
Okay.
607
I just wanna make-
districts, yeah.
It's okay.
Those are bragging rights. I want to make sure I have my stats right.
Okay. So achievement. Achievement measures how well our students perform on state assessments, and state assessments measure the actual curriculum that's being taught. So it is how well our students perform. And we are measured with a performance index score. Our performance index score was a 104.3, which is higher than it was last year. It's second in Franklin County. We were second last year too. We are ranked 27th in the state, and it just shows that our kids are performing very well on the curriculum that they're taught in their classrooms. We are in the 15% category of districts that received a 5 in achievement. Progress. So progress is, if you think about progress, it is a measure of student growth. So if you think about it this way, it is where a student starts in line, if they stay in line, in that same spot in line, they would receive 3 stars. And that is what the state calls proficient. You've met the goal. You stayed where we asked you to stay. If you outpace the state's projections of where you're supposed to be, then you're at a 4 star. You're getting a little bit better. You're outpacing what they expected for growth. 5 stars is significantly outpacing what they expected for growth. So again, these are projections that the state of Ohio makes by looking at all the kids that score in certain bands on the state tests and projects where they think they should be based on those projections. So I just want you to remember that 3 stars is what is expected by the state growth. And so we were 27% of districts in Ohio received 4 stars. I want to go back here for a second. This is where we are doing some reflecting. So last year we were 3 stars in progress. This year we're 4 stars. We did spend a lot of time kind of just looking and reflecting and asking ourselves questions. In places that maybe we didn't meet progress, we talked about, is our pacing accurate? Are kids getting all the content they need before they take the test? Because if they're not being taught it, it's hard to be tested over it. Can we look at pacing? We worked with a consultant, Tom Fry, to help us look at data and think about it differently and ask ourselves different questions. And we did see things make progress from doing that work. So we have Tom coming back with us again this year to help us look at data. He sees things and understands algorithms at times that I do not, but he's helped teachers make really strong connections between map data, which then helps us with the projections for progress. So we are continue to stay in this lane and continue to look and reflect and ask questions just to see if we can continue to get better.
Can I ask, do you know offhand, and I know I'm asking about other districts than ours, so perhaps you don't, how many districts or what % of districts get 5 stars? Is that really?
71 schools in the state of Ohio got 5 stars.
Okay.
So it was like, I think
15, 18.
it's like 15%, yeah.
Yeah, and do you know, is there a way to generalize the types of districts they are, or is it kind of scattered, whether they're urban, suburban, rural? Like, are we looking at districts that frankly have a lot of progress to make, and therefore perhaps I don't know that it is easier to make progress in that case, or is it a little bit of everything?
I can't answer that question, but I will look and get back to you. Because I haven't really compared to see who got 5 stars, so that is something I should look at. It's something good to analyze and reflect on.
Because typically with these things, it's almost like if you have a bad year and then you have a good year, you would show progress a
Yes.
lot more than we're here and we have to go here. Like, that's tough.
And it's also a 3-year, this is a little weedy, but it's also 3 years. So if you have a bad year, that bad year sticks with you for 3 years.
Right.
It doesn't go away until the 3rd year. So you might have 2 great years, and they are weighted different. Like your current year is 50%, and then the previous 2 are 25%. So it does stick with you for 3 years. So that's why it's really important that we just stay here and reflect. This isn't the end all be all, but it is good to have Tom working with us, and it is good to reflect and think about, are there things we can do better? Are there things we're already doing well that we can emulate in another course or in another way?
And this is based on results of our state testing, right?
Yes. Gap closing. So gap closing now, it looks at our gifted performance, and our gifted index was a 115, and we met the indicators for gifted in 2 of the 3 areas. The performance index, we missed it just by a hair. The max score this year was like a 120. So we missed that indicator by just a little, I think it's like 0.2 is what we missed it by. So we met the other 2, so we met 2 out of the 3 categories in gifted. Absenteeism is improved over last year, and it's lower than the state target, which is great. We need our kids here so they can learn. And then the state always disaggregates the data based by subgroups. We talked a little bit about that last year when I did this presentation, and there are different subgroups: socioeconomics, ethnic backgrounds, students with disabilities, over all the students in your group. And so they do that to make sure everyone is being held to high standards. And the great thing about that is our students in all of our subcategories have met the achievement level for 3 years in a row, which is great. And we're still working on progress in those areas, outpacing what the state projections are, but we met them. Everybody met growth, so that's great. And 45% of the districts achieved 5 stars, and I do think adding absenteeism and gifted into this category has helped states across the board.
Angie, may I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Before you move on? A couple things. One, do you want to get through the presentation and then have us do the questions? Because I'm already like.
I feel like to like small degree questions, we can go only because I don't want people to forget them as we go. But if it's like larger, really in depth, we would save that to the end.
Fine,
Okay.
whichever.
Well, I didn't know if you had a preference, but, okay. So when you say gifted index, what is a gifted index? Like,
So-
what are the indicators of a gifted index?
So this is a little bit deep in the weeds, but before, it was just a performance index on how well you've changed. Now, back with achievement and this is now true. There is now something called a max score. There's a max score for just achievement across the board and a max score for gifted. What a max score is they take the top 2% of Ohio, and that's the max score. So let's just bump back for a second. So the max score for the state of Ohio is a 108.
Okay.
We have a 104. So the max score you could get is a 108. They take those 2 numbers and they divide them, they get a percentage. You get 5 stars if you're above 90% in achievement. Well, we were like 96-ish%, so we got 5 stars there because of that. When you go to gifted, it's a little bit different. It's still that max score, and so the max score is going to shift every year, right? Because next year they'll take the highest 2% of this year. So this year's max score for gifted, I had a feeling someone would ask, so I wrote this stuff down. Their max score was 120.5, and our highest index was 115. So when you divide that, we were a 96.2%. The state of Ohio wanted us to hit 96.5. So we missed it by 0.3.
You keep saying gifted, and I keep thinking gifted students.
It is gifted
Okay,
students.
'cause that's
It is
where I was-
their performance index.
And this would be all the students that have a web that have been identified. through
Identified
testing
students.
With this, so it is a reflection of those specific students.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what I was, cause I'm like, the way you
Yes.
said it, I was like, give me a little bit more.
It is those
information.
identified students.
Okay.
Okay.
Which curious, what's the percentage of students in Grandview that are labeled gifted? You
Do
know?
not know that number off the top of my head, I'm sorry.
I think it's in the high 40s.
And I would probably, to give you that accurate data, I would disaggregate that and I would do academically gifted versus cognitively gifted.
I was being quiet, cause I was like, which type of gifted?
Yeah.
Right.
So
those are
I'd
two
want to be
different
accurate. I wouldn't, I
Those are
don't,
two different children.
yeah, I don't
But
want to.
both of them get a web, so that's what I was
Yes.
wondering.
Graduation rate, we were at, our 4-year rate was 98.3, which is better than last year, and it's outshooting the state requirement by far. Our 5-year rate stayed about the same, and we were with 38% districts that received 5 stars. I felt like it was important to kind of just know where we were in all categories. And then early literacy is ranked on 3 areas, and early literacy is based heavily on the 3rd grade reading test. So the first thing they're rated on is the proficiency rate, and that's the number of kids who score a 700 on that literacy assessment by the state of Ohio, and we had 93% of our kids score at that 700 marker. That's an increase from last year. And then improving literacy, it is an actual fall to fall measure. So they look that we report it based on MAP scores. So wherever a 1st grader was in the fall map to where they are in the 2nd grade of a fall map. And it's a fall to fall measure. They're looking that we're improving literacy, that kids are meeting the set benchmarks by MAP. So it's a fall to fall measure. We are at 67.9% of our kids improving. And then promotion rate was 100%. And we are 9% of the schools in Ohio got 5 in early literacy. So that was pretty impressive.
Can you tell me how proficiency is linked to the promotion rate? I thought that those two were sort of like, you had to be proficient to be promoted, but not
That is not true.
Okay.
So the state of Ohio has a cut score, which is below proficient, for the 3rd grade reading guarantee. So to be promoted to 4th grade, you have to hit the promotion score.
Okay.
The promotion score has risen every year since I was the elementary principal there, and it just continues to rise. So last year it was a 684. This year it's 690. Their goal is to get it to every student be 700. And then this area is not, we talked a little bit about it last year. It is not yet rated. The reason it's not rated is because they can't come up with how they're gonna calculate it. So it won't be rated again next year either. It's still 2 years out. But let's talk about what it will be, because we're thinking about those things, right? So ACT remediation free scores, ACT sets a score every year about what is remediation free. You can take it multiple times, but then they'll tell you when, like, okay, you have a remediation free score now. Our students were just a little lower this year than they were last. Then I'm gonna skip and do AP scores. So then they look at AP scores and they're looking for that +3, because that's usually when a college will take that as a college course. They'll accept that as a college course, and our students went up this year in passing AP. And then dual enrollment. This was really tricky for us because the state of Ohio used to say 3 courses, 3 college credit plus courses. Well, you could take a class that's 2 and a class that's 3 and a class that's 1, and they're not saying that anymore. They're saying 12 semester hours. And last year, seniors left with an average of 16 semester hours. So we're hitting that. And we always have to remember when we think about those things, we aren't a huge district. We only have so many kids, and they're involved in everything. And so I really do think it's a balance of mental health as well as trying to meet these scores, because you don't want them taking, and we don't have kids, you know, there's the rumor out there that kids are taking 5 AP courses, and we do have 1 or 2 that are doing that. They're driven individuals, but we don't have a lot of kids doing that. But if they're taking AP, they can't be taking CCP too. So we want to make sure that we just, as we continue to grow and learn in this area, that we remember keeping the whole child in mind at the same time.
When you say an average of 16, is that like they graduate with a total of 16 credit hours or semester hours rather? Not like for that year necessarily, it's just what they had total for their career.
Total for their career, yeah.
I know you don't have this, but it sometimes give us the differentiation between the grades in the AP classes and the grades in the AP scores.
The
Do you,
grade,
do you understand what I'm saying?
no, I don't.
So, I got a 2 on the AP test in world history, and I got an A in the class. Like that desegregation.
So I'm not sure that, what I would say is, having my own college student, an AP exam, so first of all, taking an AP course is very rigorous, and they are putting the curriculum quick and fast. And so a teacher might slow down things and maybe chunk for tests, and so the kids might be doing things to keep their grades up the entire time. But taking those exams, that is all of that material condensed, and it's the first time they've ever had an exam like that. I have my own, I think sometimes when you cram that much stuff in and you take a big exam, sometimes you don't always hold on to all of that information because it's in-depth and it's quick and it's a lot. So sometimes our kids don't perform as well on a test as they do in the classroom.
I'm curious as to the difference. And
Oh,
that's-
like if I could tell you how many kids get A's versus 3s?
so to speak.
Yeah, I can look into that.
And not, I know you don't have this, but like how does the grade compare to the thing? I understand
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying, which is why I'm curious about this information.
Absolutely.
That's
I
all.
can look into that.
Yeah.
I absolutely
Yeah.
do not have that, but I will look into that for you. Honors diplomas, those are based on what students take. And again, 60% of our kids went for honors diplomas, so they are keeping track and making sure that they're receiving those honors diplomas. And then industry credentials, we did have 1 student leave high school last year. No, 2 students leave with industry credentials, but this is part of our strategic planning as well. It's something we're gonna be investigating is, do we have college credit plus classes, or are we getting kids in pipelines that maybe want to do something, but they wanna add an industry credential so they can make money to go to college, or make money while they're in college? It just, and trying to break that mindset of like, it has to be college or workforce. Like, it can be both. Like, you can get an industry credential in cybersecurity, and you can use that to make money to go to college or while you're in college. So thinking about not an if-then situation, but an if and more, I guess, mentality, and that's part of our strategic planning.
And so by industry credentials, you just gave an example there, but like, can you give a few more for me to understand what
Yeah,
that means?
a drones license.
So it's like some kind of a license or certificate?
So you
that's-
can take a course, so you could, Columbus State has a few different ones where you can take a course and then you end up with an industry credential. I'm meeting with a former superintendent next week to talk about new pathways for industry credentials and how can.
With Intel. So
Oh, yeah.
Columbus State has created a pathway to feed Intel. And there's very specific jobs that they need significant people to be trained to do. Other examples would be health, like broad strokes, health, engineering, electrician,
Like vocational as well.
yeah, hair.
Well, and I think that, yeah, because that's the thing that at first always comes to mind is more like the
Food,
apprenticeship kind of stuff.
yes.
But it's much broader than that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I would say the biggest difference between an industry credential and a serious pathway is that you can do it in 1 or 2 classes. And then you have
Right,
that
we're done.
behind you.
Right.
College career, and then, so we're gonna work on that in our strategic planning. Sound good? And then AP. So we gave 280 exams, and of the 280 exams, 72% of our students scored a 3 or plus. So 280 exams. Now, that was a total of 145 students that took those. U.S. News and World Report. So I've spent a lot of time trying to research what happened here. And what I can tell you is we are at 1,098 in the nation, and we're 40th in the state. And we have to remember that this information is 2 years old. So this is data from 2021. However, anybody can get on and research how they come up with their scores. Certain components are from 1819. They get their information from the state of Ohio, and I have called ODE and them, left emails and messages. No one will answer me because it says may use a combination of 2021 and 1819, or this part is just 1819. And you can get on US World Renews and it'll say, how do we rank our schools? And you can read through it and you'll see. The other thing that kept changing every time I read it was how many schools were in the nation and how many they did. So I encourage you to look. So this is a combination of either 18 and 19 or 20 and 21. I don't know the true answer there. But I wanted you to look here. I actually worked with Tom Fry on this because I told you he is a data master. And I said, can you help me figure this out? And he called me and he's like, I can't. I was like, what? So what he wanted us to stay focused on is our scorecard is still in the 90, we're still at 93%. So we're still, scoring very high. But the first part, the 40% of the scores come from AP. So College Readiness Index and College Breadth Index, that's all AP related. And you can see we're 11th in the state and 6th in the state. So that's our AP heavy side of it. The other side of it is our state proficiency and graduation, but the state assessment's broken into 2 different components, and the performance component is broken down again. But anyways, 40% of that is from the state assessments. And it only looks at high school mathematics and algebra and geometry. So if you look back here, when we were 1008, Jamie Lusher was able to get a hold of somebody, and Ohio did not release our math scores because the numbers were so low. They just masked our data. I don't know if that happened again because a lot of our students, remember, we're small, so little things really impact our data. Most of our students take algebra in 8th grade. They don't count in this. It's like that doesn't happen. So if the students take algebra in 8th grade, they're not counted in this type of review. So I don't know if they masked our math data. That's a good guess for me right now. And I'm not sure if the data is from 1819 or 2021. So I could not get answers, but I'm still trying. So that's that.
You said very quickly to summarize, 40% of that score is from AP scores, 40% is essentially OST, high school math, the 20 is...
So then there's another little 10% that looks at a subgroup, looks at our subgroups in math.
Subgroups in math specifically?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the 10% is graduation.
By the way, thank you, because I don't think I've ever actually understood how we got the score. I just knew what the score was, so the actual breakdown of how this is a little bit blowing my mind, not for you guys, but I was like, okay,
So
thank you. Long
Just-
story short, thank you.
that I didn't want to not talk about that. I felt like I needed to share, even though I couldn't be very positive of this is the reason. I still felt like it was important for you to know that in part of celebrating is also reflecting, and I'm trying to reflect and figure out how this happened.
But we're still, what's our rank? What are we?
1,098 in the nation and 40 in the state.
We're 40 in the state. Don't ever hold your head about that. From the bottom of my heart, yes, we dropped. We're 40th in the state. If that's a bad day for us, I stand up and applaud you. Don't hold your head about that. I mean that.
Thank you.
I'm yelling at people and it's coming out at you, sorry.
Like I
But
said,
they-
this
I'm
is
s- I'm sorry, real quick though, there's no, so it's like they take credit, for like AP gets looked at, but dual enrollment does not for US News and World Report.
correct.
So, and typically kids choose one path or the other.
It's hard for them to
Yeah.
do multiple.
Right.
And when you pull out your 8th graders that are Algebra 1, that are usually your stronger students, I'm like, don't hold your head about, no. That's a broken metric, and I'll say it again. Sorry, I'm gonna be quiet.
When I was at ODE, the threshold was 25. If you have less than 25 students, you mask data.
And we usually do. So, the state report card is a measure, and it's an important measure. We reflect and we celebrate on it. But we also are really excited to continue and grow. So we have our strategic plan, and we're looking at pedagogy, curriculum alignment, pacing, and pathways, and thinking about, what are we doing well? What do we need to improve on? What are new ideas we can take on? We're also looking at the well-being of kids, right? We're looking at their social and emotional sides. We're looking at new attributes of success for students, and we're looking at the whole child. How can we make sure that when they leave here, they're not just college ready, but they're ready to take on life? And then our professional development is intentional, and it's aligned to our strategic plan. And I believe as a group that we constantly analyze, reflect, and adapt to do better for our students. And that's all I have.
I have a question.
I was like, get in, because we've talked a lot.
Well, so, as our chief academic officer, and I want to point out what you just said, which is the social emotional well-being. We have, the ins and outs of our curriculum. Where would you want us to be? Like, knowing what you know about our culture, our approach, our size, like, where would you want it to be when it comes to being able to present? Because I'm getting the tone that there's a little, like, I don't know, anytime anyone says reflection, to me, I interpret that as like, oh, we didn't do as well.
Oh, I'm super proud of how well we've done.
Fantastic, because I'm in the same boat as Molly, like, especially if you don't know what years we're actually talking about and whether or not all of our, statistics were included. But like, what would you have, like, where do you want us to be?
Okay, so I'm not taking a lot of stock. I'm a little competitive, so I don't take a lot of stock in this, but I'm very proud of how hard our teachers work and what our students give to us every day. And so for a publication to come out with numbers that look like we didn't do well, that's disheartening to me. Do I think that's a reflection of what we're doing? Absolutely not at all. So that's probably the only part that disheartens me, because I am super proud of the work that we're doing. But really, if you wanted to know where I am most curious about growing, is in pathways, creating that mentality of the college is okay, but there is the more than, right? You can have an industry credential, and kind of, because I've done some things with students where I've talk to them about, hey, I may have this opportunity for you this summer to do an internship. I heard you were interested in welding, or I heard you were interested in construction, and I've worked it out with a company. Do you want to do that? And our kids say no. And that's because they live in a great place, and they want to be at home for the summer, and they want to be with their friends, and I'm not faulting them. So I would like to create some opportunities where they don't think about it as I have to do this, or I have to do this, and there is no middle ground. I want to grow in that middle ground a little bit.
You want
I
to
really-
grow that I
yeah.
get to.
Yeah.
Yes,
I get to.
yeah.
I would encourage us to engage our parents in that conversation too. And I've said this in our planning discussions, but I really think, I think most parents I'm familiar with or spoken to, if their child was given that opportunity and the parent knew it was between that opportunity or being at home and going to the pool, it would be that opportunity. You know what I mean? So I think the more informed we can engage our community to get on that same page, I think you'd get a big lift, in my humble opinion.
Great,
So please continue to do that.
thank you. Anything else?
Did you have any other questions from anybody else? Look like you're pondering still. So I just don't
For the
wanna
Mr. Bodie.
move on.
Mr. Bodie question's gonna be
There's like a
great.
serious question coming. No, sort of piggybacking on what they're saying a little bit is that, and why I, specifically asked about the dual enrollment with regard to the U.S. News and World Report rankings, is that you don't want to fall into a trap of chasing, you know, some kind of national ranking to the detriment of our kids.
Yeah.
And so, for a lot of families, dual enrollment is what makes sense, and we wanna make sure that we're still pushing that as a feasible opportunity for kids, which it sounds like we are, so I'm not saying that in a way that means we're not, but, you know, I just always want us to be careful of keeping that in mind, and it sounds like you are.
Well, something I'm super proud of is, we had a gentleman here I did not get to work with, but his name was Rich Holt, and he worked with Columbus State. So sometimes the hard thing about CCP classes for someplace small like this is they say, well, we'll give you somebody online.
Yeah.
And everybody knows that that's not always a kid's preference to learn. So Emily Meister said, hey, if I could do that as summer professional development and you give me some release time, I would audit courses and I would become affiliated with Columbus State. So she's offered 2 new math classes,
Wow.
CCP math classes, because she has done that work for us and spent her summers auditing classes. And so now she's offering 2 CCP classes. Oh, no, she's at 3. 3
Was that
CCP
last
classes.
Does that mean she teaches them?
Yeah,
Here,
so she
On top
teaches
of her
them.
course load?
That is her course
Oh,
load here.
that's her course load, okay.
She is entirely pretty much college credit plus coursework now. But she's credentialed to do that. You have to be credentialed through Columbus State in order to teach for them. And she has given up her summers to do that for us and audit courses, and that, I think, has been great. So we're just continuing to look at ways like, okay, if they don't want to go to there, how can we bring it here? So we're going to continue to think outside the box and try to do those things. And I did get good news today that they will finally count AP classes as the 12 semester hours that I talked about,
That's big.
if and only if the college accepts it.
Oh.
So I have to follow the kids and make sure that the college accepted it. If the college accepted it, we get credit as a semester hour class, a 3 semester
That's
hour
helpful
class.
for this,
That is really helpful for someone as small as we are.
yes.
So there's positives.
With that, and it's kind of related, kind of not, kind of yes. Following the kids, because I'm listening to a lot of it, and a lot of it, now, this is a very test-minded presentation, and it feels a lot of like chasing grades, chasing metrics, and I don't think that is what we're about.
Nope.
I also don't necessarily have empirical evidence to support what I say. So as you said, with following the kids, I wanted to touch back with where are we at with getting information from our students post-graduation?
So, great. The hardest part about following kids after graduation is that they gotta respond to us. But with School Links now, it was so easy. I needed to communicate with all of last year's graduates. And so I went into School Links, I took all their personal emails, put them in a blind copy email, and I said, please read at the top, urgent. And I had kids respond to me.
Great.
So as we continue to do this every year, we can ask different questions and build our surveys in different ways. But it is the first time that we've been able to quickly not have to go to the parents, because you're not supposed to do that anymore, but to quickly grab all their emails, send them an email, and then I got responses. So it is the hardest part about following kids is that they respond.
So,
There's inevitably some bias to that too then, because, you know, who's responding? The people that are proud of where they are, or, you know, or the people who have beef with the district, you know, so you're gonna inevitably get some bias, but.
I mean, we'll use some clearinghouses too that, you know, look at data, but actual responses from kids are most accurate, so.
so I'm hearing you say that we will use, we have, will we, and it's okay to tell me no, for the class of 2024, we will have a set of like survey that we give them, like we will start to get empirical data that says,
We will have the survey.
and that will
And
be
we will
shared
get-
with us.
Sure.
You go, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, it's required by the state of Ohio now that we
Okay.
do a survey with your seniors and that you get their information and you find out what colleges they're going to and that, you know, you try to gain that information. Again, it's just a matter of getting them to respond.
Yeah, because we've talked about it for a while, because that's where I'm like, are we?
We
We've
have
talked
it.
about doing it, and now I'm like, we are that's what I wanted to confirm is, so 2024, we will start to get our hands on data. Because it's like, our numbers are great, this is great. What are the kids
You want to
do-
see if they're finishing.
No, I actually.
Oh, I do.
Yeah, yes.
And we've talked about that. I
I'm
mean,
not just finishing, but did we prepare them for the
Did they
next
feel
step?
adequately prepared? Yeah,
And
absolutely.
maybe it's not college.
Right.
Maybe it's like, honestly, my biggest questions are these kids happy? I don't care what they do beyond that sometimes, but
Yeah.
it's like, what are our kids doing once they leave us? Did we do our job and send them off and they fly?
Well,
And
and
it's okay if they don't.
is that something your position would do, or do we ever, and this is a conversation for a later time, but
Or is
would
it
we ever
Rob?
expand your
It's Jim.
team to include a staff member just to give arms and legs to what you're talking about here, since you're overseeing all of the curriculum?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Like hiring somebody else to be able to track these numbers?
Oh, can we put it on your plate and you can
I
still
mean,
do
yeah,
your
like,
job?
that seems like a lot for you to have to do,
I was
especially.
gonna say the same. I mean,
Yeah.
this is near and dear to my heart. I know we've talked about it a number of times, and so I really love hearing it from you. My concern is it's like if Angie Ullum is the one that's like, you're trying to do all this and copy, email addresses. I'm thinking the same thing. Like, I think it's important to us, and I would like to know what resources you need to
Yeah,
really follow through
not that
on
you're not
this.
capable, but like, you know.
Right.
Just told you I was a little competitive.
Yeah, I know. That's not a challenge, Angie. It's just, I mean, I think as this conversation continues, as it already has, and if this is gonna start to be part of our focus, more so in this next strategic plan, I think that's a conversation that should be had.
And Rob and I are definitely talking about, how this all works through school links and what other things do we need to do and how the counselors fit into that. So we are, he's doing a really nice job of looking at what's going on in the counseling department and then how can we make sure that we're all working as a team? Because it is gonna take all of us. It can't just be me and it can't just be Rob. So we are talking about that.
Are you aware of anything like at a state level where they're trying to connect the secondary and post-secondary data? So like.
You could extend the SSID to at least public universities in the state. Are they attempting that? Because I was gonna ask the
Right,
exact
which
same
would
thing.
be-
I felt like that's been
seems like-
discussed
yeah.
a lot, but I don't know that they can.
I've heard a lot of things recently about a lot of bills and laws, and that's not something I've heard about recently.
Well, and I don't even think this wasn't like a law. This was just sort of an initiative where it was, obviously you can take the SSID and that's how they track the kids between community schools and whatever, but why can't you extend that to higher ed? They're under the same roof, like physically,
Right.
it's.
It could be something to do, to be honest with you, it could be something to do with the fact that when they turn 18,
Yeah,
they are in charge of their data. Like, as a parent, the university's not supposed to give you their
Right.
grades. They're not supposed,
Right.
they do become the owners of their own data. So that could be in the way of that. I don't know. But I have not heard anything, but just knowing that when having two college kids, knowing that when they turn 18, all of a sudden they're adults, and that universities do not have to share information with parents, and the kids do become owners of their data. And I will say, it's been very interesting, as we did interviews with our seniors last year, we did some mock interviews, the leadership team, and I was shocked how many kids are like, no, I don't have a Instagram or a social media presence because I really don't want that. So I do think kids are being more savvy about data as they get older, and so they could honestly say, I don't want you to follow me, and we have to honor that.
Yes, we should.
yeah. Yeah, no, it is interesting. I just read an article today, and you're seeing them pop up a lot, I think, on the wake of the pandemic, about the idea of grade inflation. And I'm not saying that that's what's happening here, just it's broadly a conversation that's happening on a national level. But whether there's a disconnect between you see a kid's GPA when they graduate and how they're able to succeed in college. And it seems like we're supposed to have, higher ed and primary and secondary ed communicating to make sure it's as seamless as can be, although it's challenging, but to make sure. But that's why I know there's a lot of qualifiers on tests, on standardized tests. But on the other hand, it's the only way to compare ourselves across other districts to make sure where do we stack up against each other as opposed to where are we just within our walls. But I don't know, just sort of making sure that there's not a disconnect between our kids do really well here, but do they do well once they leave here? Like, does it all mesh?
Yeah. I will tell you, just share a real quick story, and then I won't say anything else, but my daughter, both my daughters did mastery learning, right? So they got to retake things until they got it, and both my daughters are doing fine in college, but my youngest, she took her first exam, and she said, I have to come home, and I said, why? She said, I got a 70, and I said, okay, what's the curve? And she's like, I don't know what you mean. And I said, what was the lowest grade? And she said, somebody got a 35. Who gets a 35? And I said, well, then your 70 is going to be more like an 80. It's going to be okay. She's like, that's stupid. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And she's like, does this professor want me to learn this material, or does he just need me to get a grade? Like, so she was very, like, angry about the whole, like, testing on a curve, because in her mind, that didn't test somebody's knowledge or understanding of the curriculum. So it is interesting, some of the kids that are going through mastery, to go into that, like, now you're in a bell curve and it's gonna move based on your lowest person's score. So I think this is always, you wanna keep looking at it, but you just always have to keep thinking about what's best in the long run for kids. And the best thing for our kids is that they're successful, happy, and they do well when they get there.
Right.
But wherever there is.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the other thing
Right.
too, like, that's why I asked about the AP scores versus grades in class, and there's a pendulum, one of them, I don't know, swing in education where it's like, we have almost over-babied them, to use my terms, where it's like, you can take a retest, you can take late work, you can do this, and then they get to college and it's this. We have 60% that graduated with honors diplomas. That's fantastic. What does that translate to in the real world? So I'm very excited to see when it does come, as long as it does arrive, what is the class of 2024 gonna say in 2025, 2026, so on and so forth. And then I'm very happy to see that there are more opportunities for industry credentials. Like you said, and we've heard me say this before, college isn't the next step for every kid. Some kids maybe, but there's a lot of kids that are going to college that are, then what? There's a lot of life that needs to happen between them. So there was a lot of data. It was very test-minded, as this grade cards are.
Yeah.
I do want to say very much thank you for the breakdown of U.S. News and World Report. And I don't know why it's taken me 6 years to get to, this is actually what it stands for. And I was like, okay, so we have a math test, and that's what it is. I mean, that's how I understand it, but thank you. This presentation is very informative. Thank you.
We've talked, or at least, I've talked with Andy about it a little bit, but about maybe trying to do like a deeper dive into teaching and learning too, to get a little bit more knowledge about progress, and then about like the subgroups even, about if you're talking about special education and gifted, and however you define gifted, and then the kids who are neither, and how the progress works for each of them. So I don't know, we do have a board, work session, but that's supposed to be about Stevenson, and I don't want to corrupt that time with any other topic, because I think we need the time we have set aside just for that. However, maybe the first 5 minutes we can talk about whether we might want to schedule another work session specifically to talk about teaching and learning sometime thereafter. And also, everyone remember, we do have the counselors coming to give a presentation at some point,
Next
right?
month.
It's next month. Yeah, to talk a little bit more about the counseling aspect of this, so.
You do great, I just have a lot of questions.
Yeah, no, we live in a great district.
Anticipate some of them.
Yeah,
You can't,
did
I
great.
mean, Angie, I don't even know what I'm gonna ask, so if you can get one or two ahead of me, you won today.
Okay, ready to move on to building and department reports. I don't think we have anything to add there, but a superintendent report from Andy Culp.
Wanted to highlight a couple things. First, our 8th grade class presently touring Washington DC and Gettysburg, which is always a very exciting and benchmark of Grandview Heights schooling
And the
experience.
buses got off this
And the
time
buses,
without any.
oh my gosh, Jim and I were just talking about that. He said, I'd been on the job like a week and buses didn't show up. That was his,
Welcome to
that was his
Grandview,
memory.
Jim.
Yeah, welcome
We
to
do
Grandview.
things.
I want to give our homecoming advisor, Kevin McCarthy, a shout out. We had a successful, wonderful homecoming week, and that is a lot of work that goes into that. I wanted to highlight, because I know, understandably so, the board, and I've even had a couple community members ask about the landscaping in front of Larson Middle School here. So some specific questions are the density or quality of the grass. And so wanted to let you know that Jim has met with Greenscapes, which is the name of the landscape company that planted the grass. They're going to aerate and overseed, I think, this week, if not this week, early next or this weekend. They are optimistic that we likely will be able to use that grass space this spring. So that grass is fully guaranteed and back, but they are taking those additional steps. Additionally, right in front of Larson Middle School, we're looking to get a quote from Greenscapes such that the landscaping looks very similar to what it looks like in front of the high school, so the two match. You may have noticed that we put in 3 new railings over in the high school gym entrance. Additionally, we're looking to have a concrete company, already have a quote for a concrete company to do some work. If you look close, those steps, the concrete is, just needs a little love, for lack of a better word, and they're going to do that. And then we also have had some very early investigation and estimations for what I would describe as like an industrial tarp to provide additional shade out here as well as over in the outdoor learning area. So I wanted to just update the board on that. While I'm on the topic somewhat of construction, as you all know, we continue our journey with the master planning of Stevenson Elementary. We have a follow-up meeting next week with that committee. It's going to be a Zoom meeting with Perkins and Will, Amy Ekman, Steve Turks, to give an update on that planning. Just to recap, that site is where we're looking to do something unanimously of the committee, and I know we have a board work session scheduled to discuss this further, but just a preview of coming attractions is unanimously, as opposed to phasing it where the students would go to school on site while construction is happening, thus spreading out construction for 3 years. Unanimously, the committee wanted for the students to be removed, the staff to be removed, so that we could do construction in 15 months, whether it's a reno or new. We will present pricing for both a reno and a new on that footprint. Unanimous, the committee wanted a new Stevenson Elementary. So wanted to give that quick update for you. And again, we're going to, all of us, dig into those options and planning and costs at our scheduled board work session. The fall play, Puffs or 7 increasingly eventful years at a certain school of magic. So that's always an exciting time, and I love attending that play, so wanted to give a shout out to that. And last but certainly not least, the annual financial prospectus is almost complete and ready to go out of our treasurer's office. I know, because I get to have a front row seat, that Haley and Beth have been tirelessly working on the financial prospectus, which is perhaps a great segue into what is next on our agenda.
The core team report.
Somebody needs to read the agenda.
Almost.
So close. So close. Honestly, the core team report. Well, you weren't. You were traipsing around Europe when we had our last meeting, so.
Good for you.
Yeah. Traipsing.
That sounds like a little
Like
jealousy.
skipping or something. I don't know. But we did have it, and so I say honestly, a lot of it Andy just covered in the superintendent report. We talked pretty thoroughly about the landscaping and about the grass and what was going to be done to try to help it out this fall. You know, to make it look better for spring and get to use it in the spring. And we talked about the concrete. We talked about the swing, which is in his written report, but he didn't touch on verbally. But
So update on that real quick. I believe we're going to have, it's a casing issue. Well, go ahead, Jim.
The brackets that were attached to the pole, they changed manufacturers. They had an issue with one in the country, and they basically just shut all of them down, just out of an abundance of caution. They did find out that the brackets on our swing were part of that batch, and so they are getting new brackets. And so we're hoping that those will be here and the swings are installed in the next week to 10 days. So,
Did you shut down the Gaga pit yet?
no,
No.
still going strong.
Just
Going
my
strong.
child's knuckles. It's fine.
I know, people love Gaga.
They love the Gaga
The
ball.
Gaga for Gaga. That's how it got its name, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't recall offhand if there was much else that we talked about. There's those,
I think maybe we talked about a drinking fountain being added
yes,
in the
in
weight
the weight
room.
room,
Or the
right.
wellness room.
the wellness center.
Of spigots on the east side of the high school,
Right, there's no outdoor spigots on the high school that they're working to fix.
but I think that does cover it.
Yeah, otherwise that pretty much covers it.
Any leftover monies from our construction project goes into our permanent improvement fund?
Yeah, and that number went up just a little bit, unexpectedly, so that was.
Is that in the financial prospectus?
It is.
How
Okay,
about
well, that's
that?
good, yeah, so we have, leftover money going into
That's a good
permanent improvement.
You're a master of the segue tonight. You're gonna get this one in.
Have you heard anything, I did my own question to my own report. Have you heard anything about the light on Fairview and First? Is that still planned?
It
The
is
traffic
still
light?
planned, although it is still planned, I do know that. I don't know the timing. Jim, do you?
I don't. I think they had anticipated having it in already at this point.
I agree.
They
I
have.
fully agree with that.
That's why I was asking, because I remember seeing, this has been quite a while ago, but I remember seeing that they were hoping by the end of August. Obviously, that hasn't happened, and thankfully, honestly, it doesn't seem to be like a terrible situation without it, so it's not as though it's an emergency, but
I will tell you, the drop-off and pickup
it's been going well.
on this campus, and I'm even going back to before any of this began, it is transformationally better.
Yeah, I've actually had a couple of people say that to me as a board member. I cannot take any credit for it. You guys deserve all the credit, but it's, people have said that it has made a huge difference to have.
At Fairview,
Yeah, to have the two, both
Yeah.
Fairview and Oakland open for drop off.
Kids are still spewing into the streets on their bikes, though.
Really?
Not to be a Debbie Downer, but there are people that so that's still.
They're like
a
off
cons-
school campus, simply they're
Like
just not
at
being.
3 o'clock, they just explode onto the street. So this has been a problem for a while. I don't mean to steal your thunder.
No,
It's
no.
great that there's a light there, but it's still, they come out of
I'll have Sean and
Like
Sam
safety.
send another reminder.
yeah.
It-
I know they've done so
It makes me feel
much.
better, because honestly, it is worrisome, right?
Oh my gosh,
No,
it's
that's,
very-
I think I've more heard from parents who are driving their kids to and from school that
Absolutely.
it's easier.
huge.
It's not quite as big a
Yes,
headache,
yes,
but yeah, biking safety is,
Well, in these scooters,
oh, the electric scooter started. I know.
Definitely
know.
started, yeah.
and I'm not talking about like the scooter, motorcycle type scooter.
No,
No,
like
just
the
an
We're
electric.
talking about just to be clear.
motorized
Yeah.
scooter. I don't even know, well, this is a conversation for another time. Go ahead.
I guess we've moved outside of our purview.
Financial.
No, on to the treasurer's presentation.
Okay. So I'm going to start with a few highlights, financial highlights as of the end of September, and then I'm going to shift gears and do a quick recap of our updated 5-year forecast. So starting off, looking at our general fund, our taxes, there's no change since last month, where we've received about 45% of our fiscal year taxes. State funding is where we expect it to be. The property tax allocation, the homestead and rollback reimbursement is still pending as of the end of September. The Grandview Yard revenue, we did get little bit of an additional settlement from the city for the rollback portion of that settlement. So we're at about almost 49% of what our fiscal year budget is on the Grandview Yard. Interest for the month was just a little over $70,000, and we're at almost $204,000 for the fiscal year already. So, interest rates, when you can invest, it's a good thing where they're at in terms of what we can do with our idle cash balance. So expenditures, we're real close to our budget. We're at about 26.1, and we're 25% of the way through the year. Our investment, the U.S. Bank investment account is at about 2.83, And our Star Ohio went up a few more basis points to 5.56 as of the end of September. So we've got a large balance in Star Ohio and really taking advantage of that rate. I met with our investment advisor maybe a month or so ago, and just like strategizing in terms of putting some additional money into that overall investment portfolio, and making sure that just because Star Ohio is higher, right now, we do want to look at the, a longer term plan too. So it's still a balance of, at some point that Star Ohio rate, once rates start to come down again, that drops quickly. And so just working with them to kind of balance our overall portfolio. So the Permanent Improvement Fund, not a whole lot has changed since last month. The unencumbered balance is about $226,000. We've got a few pending projects which we have talked about. And then the construction fund, we're winding down, of course. September interest earnings just a little over $5,000, and our project to date is about $2,014,000 net of the fees. Construction costs, we have spent 99.3. We're down to the final the final September, and then October's invoicing will be the retainage, is what I'm expecting. So we're real close on that. The soft costs, we're at about 95.3, and then the fund balance is $891,000. I have made a couple payments since then, so we're down to about $700,000 right now, since the start of October. A couple payments to finalize the architectural invoices with Moody Nolan. We've paid those, gotten those finalized. So, and then again, Star Ohio is where the entire 700 and some thousand that we have on hand right now is in Star Ohio. So, because it's short term and it's all there, and so we are taking full advantage of this higher interest rate here. So continue to add a little bit more to our fund balance in terms of interest. So we talked about this last month. There's been no changes. The overall project, we're at about close to $58.2 million. The only thing that gets added to these sources is, at this point, is the interest revenue each month. And so we do expect to end, Andy mentioned this, end the project with some money still in the bank. And again, that money will be consistent with the purpose of that ballot language. It will be put in the PI fund and earmarked for that same type of purpose, so facility improvements. So I talked to Doug Addis a few days ago, and he is kind of finalizing things with CKE, wrapping up a couple other kind of pending things, and so we do expect to have a balance at the end of the project. So we'll definitely put that towards some of the other things that we have going on. So anyway, any questions on any of that before I kind of switch gears here? Okay. So the updated 5-year forecast is on the agenda for approval tonight, and the Finance Committee met a couple weeks ago. Eric, Molly, Andy, and I, and reviewed the updates to that. So just a quick recap on this first page. The forecast is something we update twice a year per ODE's guidelines, but really it's an important tool that we monitor cash flow and levy cycles and all those things to really monitor our finances. So, it helps us be able to see what's coming before, before we're in a situation where we're in need of additional funds or such. So definitely a good financial tool. Does show 3 years of our historical data, 5 years of projections, and it's important, of course, to understand it's really a snapshot in time. Things change, almost as soon as we get that done, there are things will start changing that impact those numbers. So it is, as I said, it's kind of a snapshot at the time that I put that together. So Finance Committee, like I said, met September 18th, and we talked about it. So one other thing I'd like to talk about is just some of the uncertainties, some of the things that we make our best guess and our best educated guess about. But a few of the uncertainties that are kind of underlying in that forecast, the state budget, of course. You know, it's a biennial budget, so it's every 2 years, but the forecast is 5 years. So there's always 2 biennial budgets that are not known at the time that we put this together. More recently, there has been some proposed legislation that could impact property tax and how those are collected and calculated. And so that is something that, you know, is very relevant right now. So we continue to keep a close eye on that. We've had some legislative updates as recently as this morning on some of those topics. So interest rates again, you know, there's some volatility in you know, looking at 5 years, and we know what interest rates are today, but of course there's going to be a lot that changes in you know, that 5-year period. Labor negotiations, of course, and then the Grandview Yard being a large source of revenue for us, and just not knowing the exact you know, final build out of the remaining projects there. So those are some of the uncertainties. What I like to kind of focus on, and what we talked about in the Finance Committee, is what has changed since the last forecast. So that's kind of where I like to start. And so there are just really not a lot has changed. So I will say that not a whole lot has changed. A few things that I wanted to highlight though. The 2023 reappraisal in Franklin County that is, you know, going to be finalized in the coming couple months. The estimated property value increase for our school district was about 17%. At the time that is put out, that those numbers are released, property owners still have a chance to kind of contest those values or provide additional evidence that if they feel like those values are too high. So I do use 16% in the forecast to leave a little bit of a cushion there. And so what that 17 or 16% increase equals in terms of dollars is about $220,000 of additional taxes per year. So that is only on inside millage. The school district and the other local governments do not get an increase on voted levies for the most part. So inside millage will generate some additional funds. And then kind of on the flip side, impacting tax projections is an update that we have recently received on the AEP substation project. So the timeline that I got from the Village of Marble Cliff within the last month or so is that project is about a year behind where it most recently was expected to be completed. So estimated completion date at this point is not until summer of 2025. So we're about a year and a half out, and then it would be 26 before it comes on the tax duplicate, and then calendar year 27 before the school district would receive the first funds from that. So that is a little bit delayed from where we expected, and I did make that update to the forecast. So while taxes are going to go up a little bit from this reappraisal in the final year, the final 2 years they're going to go down a little bit because of that being pushed back. And then finally, interest rates, you know, of course, are a lot higher than where they were even a year ago, and I mean even 6 months ago. So the projections are updated with where rates are and where we think they will be. So those are really largely the only significant changes to the forecast. And so kind of just a snapshot overall, again, I would say it's a very stable financial forecast. The cash balance in 2028 is about $8.6 million. The unreserved balance is about $5.2 million. And interestingly, I went back a year ago, so 2 forecasts ago, and those 2 numbers were almost identical for the 5th year of the forecast. So again, not a whole lot has changed in that time. Local revenue, of course, we know that we rely heavily on our local taxpayers. About 88% of our operating budget comes from local sources. And most of that, 65% is local taxpayers. The Grandview Yard really is local taxpayers as well. It is just, until the TIF is done, it is categorized different. So anyway, about 85% comes from local property tax dollars. Salary and benefits, about 79%. That's pretty typical for a school and where we have typically been. So a couple charts to kind of show those breakdowns. And that's kind of all I have on that. So Andy mentioned the financial prospectus. I will share a draft of that with all of you before we send that out. We do expect to send that out soon. We typically send that out in October of each year. So this is our 7th version of that. And so once we finish the fiscal year, we kind of work on that, get that out generally before the end of October. And it talks a little bit more about some of this forecast information that I just shared as well.
That's great.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
This is so incredibly minor to even ask, but when I'm looking at the 5-year forecast right now, in fiscal year '26, there's a slight decrease in property tax revenue. I mean, and by slight, I mean like $10,000. Very slight. But I was just curious, like, what that might be.
You know what, let me pull that up. I think right offhand. So fiscal year '26 is where you see a $10,000 decrease. You know, I don't have that answer right offhand.
Yeah.
Let me follow up and I'll get it to you.
Yeah, no, I was just curious. And from, obviously we go through a reappraisal update, it's scheduled every 3 years.
Right.
So when you see like the actuals and there's variation, is that just simply the collection rate? Like it has to do with whether you're just collecting better one year over another?
It would, and it would be.
Does anything else change otherwise?
So the 3 years of actual data,
Yeah.
part of that, the variation would be who pays their full bill in the first half of the calendar year versus who splits.
Oh, okay.
So sometimes that calendar year split impacts our
Impacts the
fiscal years a little bit
that
different.
makes sense.
Yeah, the collection rate, the if there were any significant refunds. So yeah, those would be the primary
I was
differences.
because just curious, because it does look like it goes up almost every year, but we only go through a reappraisal or update every 3 years, so I was curious.
Right, so new construction is another thing that
And that hits right away, yeah.
New construction hits right away. It does not wait for the reappraisal.
Right, that's true.
Yeah. So, and we have had a fair amount of new construction.
Yeah,
of
for a
course.
place with closed borders, with new construction's kind of amazing.
Right. And the other thing I will say is our public utility value, although I don't get much information to show, detail behind what those increases are, the public utility value has steadily increased over the last number of years, and public utility value is taxed at the full voted tax rate. There's no reduction factors. So changes in public utility value make a big, have a big impact on the actual tax collection.
Yeah, I guess right now, prior to this AEP substation construction, that's gotta be a relatively small portion of our,
It's
More than I would
bigger than
think.
you would think. It is a pretty fair amount.
okay.
So I'll get you the breakdown on that, but it's larger than probably what you would expect.
Yeah, okay.
The Grandview crossing that's going in down on Dublin, that's Columbus, right?
Most of it is Columbus. There's a little bit of it that is, I think it's less than maybe
25%?
Yeah, 20, 25%.
So is that factored into the 5-year forecast?
So part of that, that's a really good question. Part of that is on the tax roll already, but not all of it. So what has been completed is in here. What has yet to be completed is not in here. So there will be likely some growth. I do factor in some growth for new construction, likely not as much as what will be coming additional on that. And there is a little bit of a delay. So when new construction is done in one calendar year, it goes on the tax roll the following calendar year, and then we get taxes the next calendar year after that. So there is a little bit of a delay. So even though it, you're seeing, a lot of build out down there, the majority of it is probably not on our tax roll yet.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so there will be more growth from that coming.
Cool.
Well, lots of legislation to follow in this area, as Beth alluded to. It's, our legislature is on a roll right now.
I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying a word.
Okay, is there a finance committee report to add to that, or?
I don't think we had much more through this, put Beth through the ringer and she answered every question, so
Impeccably, as she always does.
we have a high degree of confidence, I
Yeah.
can relay that.
We have a short meeting.
Okay, well then we have some things to vote on.
Soccer game.
So it's section 9C, 1 through 16, which includes the 5-year forecast is within that grouping there. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
And second.
Any discussion on any of the items here? Okay, hearing none, Beth, please call the roll.
Mr. Bodie?
Aye.
Mrs. Gephardt?
Aye.
Mr. Doucet?
Aye.
Mrs. Matney?
Aye.
And Ms. Wassman?
Aye.
Should think about that.
Yeah, no, I was looking on to the next one.
Just kidding. Okay, under personnel, we have 1 through
16.
16 again.
Yeah, 16's our number.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, Beth, please call the roll.
Mr. Bodie?
Aye.
Mrs. Gephardt?
Aye.
Mr. Doucet?
Aye.
Mrs. Matney?
Aye.
And Ms. Wassman?
Aye.
Okay, is there a policy committee report?
No, we didn't meet, but we will have an extensive meeting coming up soon.
Okay,
Yay.
so we do have some policies that are up for their final reading and approval. Is there a motion for those?
So moved.
Second? I can second myself.
I was like, come on, Katie.
Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, Beth, please call the roll.
Mr. Bodie?
Aye.
Mrs. Gephardt?
Aye.
Mr. Doucet?
Aye.
Mrs. Matney?
Aye.
And Ms. Wassman?
Aye.
Is there a teaching and learning committee report? Okay. All right, under co-curricular activities and extracurricular, we have A 1 through, I don't think it's 16 this time.
6.
6, 1 through 6. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Oh, okay. I didn't say this, I am listed on the,
I would recommend you abstain.
okay, I will abstain from this because I am on the volunteer list.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. Just throwing it
I
out
wasn't
there.
sure that I was gonna make it on this one.
I looked at it and I
did.
was like, ooh, there's Emily.
Okay,
Could I just ask about the indoor track?
I was looking at that too. Is that a new sport that we're offering?
So when we have an individual or individuals who have met the standard to compete in the winter state track, there's a requirement, if it's one of our athletes, that they have a Grandview Heights coach. And there's an approval process that's required in order for one of our student athletes to do winter track competition. The requirement is that the board approves that. And so this is that effort which would allow I think it's one of our student athletes to do that this winter.
And it only comes up when we have a qualifying.
That's correct.
act, So this is not an annual
Yeah,
thing.
it wouldn't be unless,
We could.
yeah, you
It
could, you
become an
certainly
annual
could.
thing.
Have we
did
had
have
this
this-
before?
We have.
We did.
We did,
Maybe
we have,
4 or 5 years ago.
Correct.
We had an athlete that did the same thing.
yes,
So this is gonna be fun for spring track.
yes,
Are they a senior?
they are.
Exciting. That's cool.
so I apologize to do this, but because I called for the motion in a second before I realized that I was gonna have to abstain for the vote, I would prefer to separate out
Yeah,
that
That's
one
probably smart.
piece.
Okay.
So do we have to do any sort of official business to like, kind of
Would you
take
like,
back that motion and?
would you like a friendly amendment to move
So-
on?
So I think you could amend your, Molly, you made
So
that.
I move on, A, 1,
Smart.
2, 3, and,
Smart.
no, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Mhm.
And I'll need a second.
I'll second.
Now we may do one. We'll
Okay.
vote, so we'll vote to approve
We
my,
have- we
my
have
friendly
to
amendment.
Approve your amendment
Uh-huh.
and then vote on the, okay.
I love Robert.
All
I
right.
love his rules.
In his rules.
I
Okay,
love 'em.
Beth, could you please call the roll?
Yeah, Mr. Bodie?
Aye.
Mrs. Gebhardt?
Aye.
Mr. Gousset?
Aye.
Mrs. Matney?
Aye.
And Ms. Wassmuth?
Aye.
Okay. Now, do we have, so then, do we need a new motion for A 1 through 5?
Now
Or
we-
does that, the amendment to the motion before
We
it
voted
changes
to
it?
change it, now
That
we
was
need to
good. So
vote
now we're good.
on
Now
it.
we will vote on it.
Mhm.
Okay. Please call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Bodie?
Aye.
Mrs. Gebhardt?
Aye.
Mr. Gousset?
Aye.
Mrs. Matney?
Aye.
And Ms. Wassmuth?
Aye.
Now we need a motion for A6.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Beth, please call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Bodie?
Aye.
Mrs. Gebhardt?
Sting?
Mr. Gousset?
Aye.
Mrs. Matney?
Aye.
And Ms. Wassmuth?
Aye.
Okay, are there any other topics for discussion?
I will just add,
Be sure I'm not on.
I checked my email right in advance of this board meeting, and hot off the press, the city of Columbus, if you recall, well, let me take a step back. If you recall, when we wanted to do our track renovation and replacement last spring, we delayed the project because it required irrigation, which was a whole zoning through Columbus and so on and so forth. We have been approved for the irrigation that has been submitted, which was a major hurdle in our moving forward to replace the track this spring. So that's good news.
Good.
Very good.
That's a good, very good news.
That's a good update.
Yeah.
Hot off the presses.
Okay, we have no reason for executive session today, so do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Beth, please call the roll.
Mr. Bodie?
Aye.
Mrs. Gebhardt?
Aye.
Mr. Gousset?
Aye.
Mrs. Matney?
Aye.
And Ms. Wassmuth?
All right.
Did I get
All
all the
finished.
motions tonight?
Thank you.